Don't wait the last minute to sign the letter of commitment.
Yes.
It sounds like you did that.
Yeah, we've all been there. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Property Hustler Show, where we interview high-level real estate players right here in Ontario. Today, Ping and I are joined by two very special guests, Paul and Paulina from Proximity Properties. They are both serial entrepreneurs with projects all across Ontario, and they have recently ventured out into multi-residential projects in Burlington, Kitchener, and Cambridge. Paulina is a realtor, and Paul has a background in construction and has taken them to crazy heights right here in the real estate market. So, guys, it's really great to have you on the show.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us.
You guys have been doing a lot of house flipping, right?
I've done a lot of flips, early 2000s, like I mentioned to Ping. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into real estate, is by accident, just owning a property at 19 and then realizing that I could leverage other friends' good credit at that time. And then we just kind of roll with it. Anybody that had good credit, we would buy a property. They would live there for a year or two, and then we would sell it and get those gains at that time. Yeah.
That's how you accidentally got into real estate.
Yeah,
Through just okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I guess you made a lot of money and you probably thought, hey, I could do this again.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I figured out that we could get mortgages as long as we had good credit. So the houses around that time were between 250 and 300,000. So we're like, okay, well, we could carry it while if I put somebody in there, right, a friend or whoever, because they're working, and then we would do the renos, and then over a year or two, decide if we want to sell it or if they want to continue living there.
And how many projects were you handling at the time? Or
At one time, I had about 7 properties.
7 flips?
Yeah, 7 flips, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and that was all in partnerships with your friends and
exactly,
stuff, right?
all partnership with friends, yeah.
Were the two of you together then?
No, we met about 10 years ago. That process was kind of a short-term buy and flip, and I was like, okay, that's great. Then fast forward to when I met Paulina, I realized that all those properties that I had were lost opportunities because I didn't really realize how I could leverage what I had, and knowing that the properties now at that time were even around $800 to $1 million. I was like, I'm not making that mistake again. So when I met Paulina, I'm like, okay, anything we get into now, we're holding.
That's a very common regret I think a lot of people have who have been in the game a long time, because you put in a lot of work in the beginning. You make your strides, you hustle to build the property up to where it is, and then you sell it, and then somebody else reaps the benefit of just holding and waiting. Right. And sometimes it feels like I worked way harder than they did and they just held the property. So it's like, are you being smarter by holding or selling? But, everybody feels that way at some point, I think.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your background. Like, were you in construction or?
Honestly, I've been hustling from the age of 12. I had a paper route, working at my aunt's deli at a young age, selling fish during Christmas time. So I always had like that, go get it and, make your way, right? So then, at 16, I was able to work construction. So I was working afternoons construction. So that was demo. And then in my culture, Polish people, a lot of them are in construction, right? So it just happened to be that everybody that I knew growing up was in some kind of construction, right? So that just transitioned to my early 20s, and then everybody was doing something in construction. That's where everything made sense, because we could buy the properties. I know the guys that are doing the construction already. So everything just merged together. Yeah. And then, demo to now running a tile company.
Mm-hmm.
We do tiles in subdivisions. Pretty much my whole adult life, I've been in some type of construction.
That actually gives you a good, I think, advantage. At least you're working with something you're familiar with. Paulina, what about yourself? Do you have an advantageous work background that gets you an edge in real estate?
Meeting Paul, I guess.
Paul, yeah, that's an advantage.
That was my the accidentally get into real estate too. But so I'm a real estate agent on the commercial side. So we're looking into multifamily buildings. So that definitely helps me a lot with our real estate investing side. And honestly, like since I met Paul, like I've been around the trade guys and renovation and construction talks, and I'm like, that definitely helps me a lot.
How long have you been a realtor?
It's going 2 years.
Going 2 years? And what were you doing before that?
So helping Paul with, with his work too, and taking care of 2 little kids.
That's
a
way
full-time
more
job.
work
Believe me.
than any construction job.
Oh
Yeah.
24/7, no sick leaves.
Yeah, and the brains behind the operation, obviously. This exposure probably gets you in a position where you really know what it is you're talking about. And even if you're working with other people, it gives you an advantage. So many realtors out there have not the first clue about what it means to actually work properties. They can sell them, talk about them, but they don't know what it means to actually go through it.
100%. And you know what, even when you looking at property, and actually our last building, I went there by myself and I was okay, this is what I see here. So I was also, seeing things that not everyone can see, but also having Paul and, be able to WhatsApp him quickly and show him the video and just get a little bit of feedback. Like, what do you think about this? Or like, what would be the expense? Like, what we have to do? It's a huge advantage. Definitely it works in our favor.
So walk us through how you guys do your due diligence on the building.
When I'm finding a building, I'll give you guys an example of the last one. So I was able to build some relationships with the agent and, just get into conversation with her and just be able to like, okay, if you have another project, just let me know when it's coming. I went to the building right away when she called me, like, I'm thinking to sell this building. I'm like, okay, Paul, coming? No, I don't have time. I have to go deal with this job here. Just go by yourself for now. So I went to the building. We did a walkthrough. I WhatsApp Paul. It's like the next day I bring him to the building, like looking from the construction site of view. And it's like, what do you think? Okay, this looks good. Beautiful building. Huge potential. Let's just put it under contract. And then we start to write the real due diligence. By doing the whole inspection, by checking the area, checking for the environmental. There's so many parts of it. What do you have to look at the property before you're gonna be going firm or you decided to close? I love real estate. It is fun, but there's also lots of things that you have to check before because it can be very expensive.
So when you guys are looking for deals like that, did you, because coming from a construction background, you're going to see anything and feel like, okay, I can fix any little things.
Yeah.
But what is the stopping point? Like because sometimes when we're looking at the properties, we know that we just don't want to be touching properties with a, let's say, foundation issue or anything that's going to be costly and not going to be adding a lot of value to the after repair value. So the question is like, how do you identify your criteria in multifamily space?
Like, where do you draw the line in terms of like what it is you're willing to tackle and what you're not?
I think for the properties that we're involved in right now, we are definitely looking for location. Is in an A neighborhood that has a good upside in either cosmetic reno or if we could increase the NOI by having a tenant turnover or lowering our expenses. Also, we're trying to find properties that we don't have to do a lot of the major components, right? Like the windows. If the windows are, within, 10 years, then, we're satisfied with that, right? But we're definitely looking for assets in good neighborhoods that we could increase by renovations.
Also, it's, it's just simply running the numbers. Like
Yeah.
when we're looking at the building and we kind of estimate the work, Paul will bring his guys to give us like, okay, this is how much it's going to cost to, and just plug it in the numbers and just give yourself enough spread. When you're doing renovation, it's never in the budget. Like go a little bit above, give yourself a little bit more, 10%, 15%, whatever, because you're going to open the walls and you're going to say like, plumbing, we need to change the whole plumbing, right?
For sure.
It's not only just this so easy, just the cosmetic renovation. So always give yourself enough spread. And if within that spread, if it still brings you value, then maybe it's a deal.
But
right?
this is why we love the multis and why we went really 2 feet forward with the projects that we have, because, with doing so many flips and in doing a custom home, we were basing that on speculation of the market, right? Like, okay, if we're going to put X amount, okay, this is what it's going to look like. But with the multi, we know what that end number looks like by the increase of the NOI. So once we saw that number, it was just like, okay, we know where that's going to land if we do X, Y, and Z.
There's a lot more control over what's actually going to happen. It's
That's
not
right.
purely speculative like
Exactly.
in the single and duplex. Is there a minimum that unit count for the multifamily projects you're willing to go into right now?
We thought we were hitting home runs with sixes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But now, because of, groups we're in, we have coaching now, we're, our mindset's a little different, and understanding that the bigger projects are almost the same amount of work with easier results. So now we're looking at, taking down a big deal. That's really, that's the big thing for us now, is we're going to stabilize what we have and then definitely look at bigger projects.
But this is just a misconception when you're getting into real estate. Oh, let's just try small.
Yeah.
Let's just start with duplex. So let's just start with sixplex. And honestly, the bigger the better.
The bigger the better.
Yeah.
It is a bigger building. You will need more capital, but it's just simply easier work. Everything in one place, the units, the same renovation. And also when it comes to the units, when you when you have 6, 8 units, you're probably counting on most of them getting vacant and being able to bring that value to the building, right? When you have 20, 24, 30 units, simply first 5, 6, 7 units will let you to kind of reposition the building and already be in a better position. So even the tenants turnover is so much easier when you have a bigger building.
There was another gentleman I spoke to a while ago. He told me something that really made me feel like, okay, we got to big up our game, which was that he says, some of the projects that I'm doing now, the exact same amount of work is just the returns have an extra zero at the end.
There you go.
Right? And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, okay, why don't we start really
Yeah.
switch it up and just go for the bigger one? Raising capital, I feel once people figure out a way to do that after you've done a few projects, it ends up being the easier part rather than tackling the actual project itself. Money is not always the root of all problems. Money is actually pretty solvable in many cases, I think. So depending on how you're going.
Yeah, we usually say that if there's any issue that can be solved by money right
Yeah.
away, it's an easy problem. It's not too difficult.
Good point.
Yeah.
The hardest problem is sometimes it's actually the people, right?
Right.
And this could be your power team. This could be the tenants, the bad tenants that you have to deal with your building, because
Yeah.
that all going to be delaying the whole process of your
Yeah.
refinancing and all that stuff.
I like what you said about when you're crunching the numbers. By the way, do you separate the work? Since you're a couple, do you separate the work as in you're doing the numbers and you're doing the assessment or something, or
Yeah.
is it clearly defined?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
I don't know if it's literally defined,
It
but
is.
it's worked out to where Paulina's more on the analytics, running the numbers, finding the deals, right?
I wonder how that happened.
Who has the final say?
It
Who has the
took,
final
it took
say?
us some time, I will tell you this.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when we were starting, I think the first 3-4 months, we actually as a couple was struggling. And we have a good marriage, but getting into real estate, we're supposed to be like the most excited and just doing this together. We're a power couple. And I'm like, I see things differently. He sees things differently. And we couldn't actually really agree who's doing what, and not to put just trying to take control of that, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it took us good 3-4 months before we like, okay, let's just have a talk here. We can't do this anymore.
Right.
Let me do something what I'm good at, and you do things what are you good at. We can't do everything together at the same time because we have different opinions and we see things differently.
By the way, I'm very impressed that I see things differently, not I see things right.
Yeah.
That can easily happen in a couple, because if you already said 3-4 months that you were struggling with this. That's not bad. As far as a couple's doing something together, and it sounds like you guys met to a point of understanding where you can recognize each other's strengths. The fact that you are where you are right now means that you've obviously found a rhythm as to who to lean on for what. And to be honest, we're not a couple, but like one of the things that we even found, because I come from that construction background, was that I would be sometimes overly zealous as to what we can do at a property, right? And I'm just like, yeah, we can fix this, we can fix that. It'll take only this much time, and it'll only cost this much. And he would multiply everything by 2, right? just in case,
Just
for
in
the
case.
budget.
And by the way, I learned to do that so that I'm not like driving myself nuts, because I'm just like, okay, now we're going over the timeline, going over the budget, and then I realize that, okay, now that's a pattern. So let me just do that so that I'm creating a bit of buffer in my mind, so that we're not getting into any like the conflicts or anything.
It makes
Yeah.
sense too. And then if you double your expense, like you have that buffer, a big buffer to where you fall, less than that estimate. You've done your job. You've done good. It's below than what you expected, right?
But you have to be also reasonable with that buffer too, because
For
you're
sure.
gonna make every deal looking bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're talking about real estate. We're talking about something buy and hold and have your strategies. I think even from our experience, we make the most money in real estate by holding it, right? So when you can see a little bit farther and like, okay, at that point, I'm going to be there. It's good. It's okay. But yes, definitely keep your buffer, like a little bit, but not just
No.
expand
Yeah,
it.
it's
Right.
interesting when you have one person on one end, one person pulling the other way. You meet in the middle, and usually that's actually
Yeah.
where you are supposed to be.
And that's
Yeah.
what a healthy marriage is.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, let's get a little technical here, because this is usually the questions I like to ask. So when you're sourcing the deal, how do you budget for the acquisition cost versus the renovation cost per unit? And we can use the Cambridge or Kitchener projects as an example.
So with the Cambridge deal, basically, I'm adding always percentage on everything. Closing costs, like I kind of know actually how much it's gonna cost per this, and that, because I already have those guys in my pocket. This is my power team, so I know their expenses, so I can add it. But I'm adding based on percentage, because sometimes you will do one report and you have to do another report, and it's another extra on a commercial. It can be $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, right? So you never know. So I'm adding the percentage of the purchase price, and that just gives me kind of the rough estimate. This is how I'm gonna get into the deal, and then I'm also bringing everything to Paul to run those numbers with him on the renovation side, on the construction side. And also like he will consult this with his team, like if this is how we're gonna doing, like how much it's gonna cost, and just put everything together, right?
And you do those calculations by square foot?
Per unit, pretty much.
Per
So
unit.
like we went into Cambridge with an estimate of 35,000 for a 2-bedroom, 30,000 for a 1-bedroom.
And what does that include?
Now that we didn't land at those numbers, right? Because when we got into the project, I was going to bring in trades from the city, and then I started noticing that that's going to be a challenge. So then I ended up reaching out to somebody that I knew who has a big company who does, they do over 100 units a day, a month turnover. So a massive company, really fast. So I started realizing now that I'm in the multifamily space, do I want to be efficient or do I want to manage the trades? So now I decided to be efficient. This was a major learning curve for me because everything before that I managed.
Right.
Here now I set aside another company to do it. So now my cost did go up, but now I got a far superior product, which was a lot easier, and it streamlined my finishings, right? So instead of working on the project myself with one set of crew, I have each unit turned over within 3 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
that's
we-
really
amazing.
quick.
Yeah.
It's very fast, right?
And that's
So when we made contact with that construction company, that's a massive asset to my power team.
Yeah.
And I realize that, and I'm willing to pay for that because I know we're going to take down a bigger deal and we're going to do the same thing. And that construction company is going to be a big reason why we're going to be able to do that.
That's awesome. One of our coaches actually told us once, if you want to scale up your business, you got to be willing to scale up yourself first, which means try to delegate, learn how to trust. Don't handle everything by yourself because that's the only way that you can really speed up the process.
This has been the easiest renovations that I've ever done. Really?
That you did not do.
Or did
Really?
not do. Yeah, well, exactly. I'm literally just going there to check up on things. And they were scared. When they turned over the first unit, they were like, Paul, we'll do one unit for you and you'll see how we work. And if you like it, then we could carry on with the other units. And they were scared because when I went in there, I'm checking everything. I'm running my fingers on the
He
tiles.
made a video with his finger going on the tiles.
I'm checking it, making sure that the growth is good, the trim is nice, right?
Was that to your liking?
Absolutely. Oh, they knocked
Actually,
it
you
out
said
of
superior.
It was
so they
good.
probably
It
did.
was
very
good.
happy.
It was good.
Very, very happy with them, and they were relieved. So that,
Okay, so
and
let's just
now
keep
we
going
have a
then.
great working relationship, and it's great thing we have.
Might I
yeah.
ask you then, how much of a difference was there on a per unit basis? in terms of your
On a
cost?
per unit basis, that increased about 15% on our budget.
15%. So
Yeah.
we're talking an extra. Oh, that's not bad.
Not
Yeah.
too bad. Yeah,
No,
not
it's
too
not
bad.
too bad.
But then
It
we
freed
also
up all your time, right?
Yeah.
freed up
Yeah.
all my time.
15%.
A budget also did include. I put mini splits because we didn't count for mini splits, and we had to add entry doors
Yeah.
to each unit.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. Okay. So and that's also one of the other things I wanted to ask, because a lot of people, one of the things they will come to us with when they're looking to get into house flipping or when they want to do renovations, and we calculate things on a square foot basis.
Right.
But then they're also asking, well, what does that square foot calculation include, or that per unit cost include? Like, does it include appliances? Does it
Right.
include windows? Does it include needing to upgrade the electrical panel, pot lights? So
Right.
when you're thinking a unit, what is it that you will typically include? I know there can be tons of things, but like just high level, what is it that you will include?
on that finished product,
Yeah.
it's gonna be turnkey, move-in ready. So
Yeah.
cleaned unit, right? So
Like new
Floors,
flooring.
kitchen.
so
trims.
in the Cambridge property, we took everything down, had to put new plywood in so that way when we put the glued on laminate, it will stick to it, right? So it's a nice surface.
So subfloor there.
Subfloor, and then new trim, new doors, new hardware, a mini split we put in. So we put in we upgraded the service also, so that way each appliance has a dedicated breaker.
So you upgraded the electrical panel as well.
Yeah. Electrical panel,
And, Okay. So they
Right.
probably had breaker system before.
Breaker.
Or sorry,
Yeah.
They had
fuse
breakers.
system.
They had breakers, but they had one breaker for the kitchen, so it was dated, right?
Okay, got it.
So somewhere along the line they must have upgraded, but not by code, right?
Do you install pot lights as well?
No pot lights.
No pot lights. Okay. So and windows you don't touch in that price.
No windows we didn't
Mm.
touch.
Okay.
How about
New
kitchen?
Kitchen, yeah, brand
kitchen
new
done, brand
kitchens
new.
with
Quartz countertop.
quartz countertop,
Nice.
herringbone backsplash. Little details to kind of make it stick out from our competitors when
Yeah.
it hits the market. Our strategy is to try to find the young professionals. They'll look at that property as a stepping stone to move forward to their
Love
life,
Yeah.
right? So if they stay there for 3-4 years, That'll allow us to renovate it again cosmetically and then hit market rents again. So that's kind of, our tenant pool is very important, right?
Okay.
And that's where that ties into location.
And the big thing is too, like you're going to have problems with the tenants either or, but you're trying to have as less headache as possible because we know in Ontario, this is very tenant friendly province, no landlord friendly. And I think there's lots of taboo going there out there because landlords, they don't speak up to, they're just too afraid sometimes to mention it. And you have one tenant that's not paying rent and like, it's going to take you months before you're going to get even a hearing for that tenant, right? So definitely the tenants pool is really, really important to try to decrease your problems.
Yeah. And do you guys manage your own properties or you have property managers on site?
We do have property managers.
Yeah, that's the one thing actually that was a big argument in our house because I'm one to learn and go through the experience and then I'll understand the process, right?
Yeah.
So that was like the first step for us to kind of like, okay, we need to, be more hands off. And that's where we hire property managers for both properties. And it's been great. It's been hard at first because we didn't understand the process. Took some time, but it's been a game changer for us.
Just to recap some of the things you said. So, when you're looking for a project and a property, you are going to be looking obviously for the value add aspect. You're checking the location because that makes determinations onto your tenant profile and also the general uplift. And if you're paying attention to location, I'm assuming you're also seeing if there's any improvements by the city that are going to be happening long term that will give you that extra lift on a project, which is also going to be hugely valuable. And in terms of that tenant profile, I think you guys are looking at something with a turnover because sometimes people end up being, lifelong tenants at a property. And sometimes people think, oh, well, isn't that great? But it's really not if you're trying to stay current with market rents on your building. That also is going to affect your refinance, right? And the cap rate that you're dealing with. So if you're able to continuously improve that over time, and also if you said like when you're doing a bigger property with multiple units, if you have, most tenants are not bad.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
If you have like one tenant though on a small building, that can be a huge percentage of your income and the performance of the building. But if you have like a 15, 20 unit building, now we're talking about one tenant who's causing you problems. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you guys are going in a very good position here.
Let's quickly talk about how you structure deals. Is there any JV on your building or this is all like you own 100%?
These are 100% funded by us. That's kind of one of the challenges we're trying to overcome is we wanted to, do the projects ourselves. We understand the construction side. We understood the numbers and then we took the dive in. And that's how we're in these deals. But now we're learning for us to scale our business. We have to JV. Yeah. That's why a big reason why we did the tour, right? We wanted to showcase others what we did, how we did it, have a open conversation and just share our story, right? And when that opportunity comes and when we look for JVs, then at least we'll have a community and, we'll have some presence already, right?
So are you guys looking for JVs partnerships right now?
As of right now, we are working on one off market that Paulina has.
Pay percent. Let's see.
In her back pocket, kind of out of our reach. So we have a JV that's going to handle that part of it, which is, from the community, from, different communities we're in. So it's been
I feel like it wouldn't be hard for the two of you to find JV partners. Like I'm talking to you guys and I want to partner with you. So I mean, if you think about it, because it's the ideal power couple, to be honest. Like you're covering every aspect, you have the correct background in what it is you're doing, you have the experience, and you've put your foot where your mouth is. A lot of people will try to do JVs and they have no experience whatsoever. But you guys put your own money on the line, your own reputation's on the line. So anybody who's going to be watching this, if they know that you're looking for JVs, your guys are going to get messages. So I mean, I wouldn't worry about that. It's not going to be an obstacle for you guys.
Yeah, and also people will understand that if there's anything goes wrong, you guys have the ability to literally step in, take over the project in your own hands.
Absolutely.
Right? A lot of people who are trying to raise capital out there, sometimes they may not have that kind of option. They try to raise, they delegate everything to the team. What happens if the team doesn't function the way that they project?
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons I love being close to the projects that we're involved in. Because if there's a hiccup, I could drive over and see. And if they're trying to charge me too much for something, I'll give you a good example. A plumber came in and they tried to charge me $500 to hook up another drain piece for a dishwasher. So it's a $5 plumbing part. And they're already working on the plumbing. So they literally just have to glue it and put it next to the original part. So they sent me the quote, $500, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, guys, are you seriously charging me $500 for a part that's really $5, and then they're like, you know what, Paul, you're right. I'm sorry, it must have been overlooked.
Sorry, I thought I was talking to someone else.
Yeah. but that just
there's a
shows
couple of
you
those situations
how
like that.
easily they could charge you for something if you're
Yeah.
not present and know, pricing or or you could go to the site and visit, right? So
Yeah, by the way, this is again some serious advantages to the way you guys have your work structured. Is that people say that in order to scale up, you can't do everything yourself. That is true, but you shouldn't be so oblivious of what it is that you're doing that you're completely reliant on someone else to the point where you can't even check them, right? Because that's how people get hosed. That's how people. One of the things that people whenever we will showcase any of our projects, we'll also show some of the numbers, and people just say, how are you guys getting things done for these prices? And then I just ask them what they're doing, and I'm like, how are you being charged so much? Right? Like, it's just because they don't know. Right? They don't know what some of the markups are, and they also don't have, like, because you have the construction background, you have the ability to cost down on certain things, which gives you a little extra edge. It's not everything. Something that I'm sure helped you guys out along the way. Somebody who's going to be covering those things. And then you said you were doing a lot of the operations in the background. Like, it sounds like you were keeping things on track. So, I mean, these are costs that sometimes people have to outsource. And if you're able to cover it in-house, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Paul and Paulina, if anybody wants to do JV with you on the next project, what is the JV structure look like?
That's a good question. That will depend on the project.
For sure.
That's a great answer.
well, what are you thinking? Like, in your mind, what does something like this look like? Because I'm sure people always have an idea of what a partnership looks like. But are you looking for people who are going to be contributing just money, or are you looking for people who are going to be contributing some kind of think about like Dragon's Den. What is your background that you're bringing to the table, right? And like, what is it that you think you're looking for?
So we're looking for partners to being more passive, because we're going to be bringing all this team here to the project, right? But again, it will depends what the other person has offered, because at the end of the day, it's the team. Now we're going to become the team, and we just have to discuss what is our role in this project and how we're going to keep within our lines, right? Because that's the thing. Like, I actually had this conversation with the other investor, and the biggest lesson for them was not to setting up the rules and lines for everyone to stay within. Like, you can manage the project and JV on the project, and everyone will have something to say about something. So you need to be very straightforward, like, who is responsible for, and this is my job, and just being accountable for that, right? The project we actually possibly will lock in the contract soon. We will be looking for the JV partner for financial sign-up point of view. And the rest we got to handle.
And you guys will be, like, your company is going to be on the title, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll set up a separate corporation for that property. We'll be the working partners, and then we'll decide what that split is once we know the exact figure of what the purchase price is.
Okay, so basically you're going to take care of the financing, the mortgage of the building, and then let's say there's a 25 to 35% for the commercial building. This is where you introduce the JV partners in. Yeah. And then you guys will be handling all the work. And depending on the scope of work, this is where you're going to determine what the split is going to be.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, question for some of the viewers is that, are you going to be investing any of your capital, or you guys are only going to be bringing your expertise?
On that specific project, that's going to be something that we're going to be just the working partners.
Got it.
But again, we're going to be stabilized and more liquid after we've finished the projects that we're working on. So like you said, we put our money where our mouth is. So if we see a project and we love it, we're definitely going to be in it. And that would probably be a project that's more risky, right? So that way there might be a bigger ROI on it, but we'll be invested with our own money, because, we'll feel much stronger. And we like to take a bigger chance for a bigger reward, right?
What kind of term would you structure? Is it going to be like 3-year term, 5-year, or 10-year term?
Again, it's all depends on the project, right? Because you may find a building, you're gonna have some vacant units already on the closing. It's just gonna be much faster going, right? But this particular building, we want to structure for 3-year project.
That's usually how we structure. 3 years.
3 year.
And then
and you know what? Especially right now in this environment, I don't want to refinance next year or year and a half. I want to wait the next year and a half, 2 years, to be able to hit better numbers. Sure. But definitely, it's not gonna stop me from buying, but it will definitely change my timeline for the project.
I wanted to ask, actually, because I forgot to ask in the beginning, how many projects have you done to date?
As a couple, or
I mean, sure, either or, as a couple
with
together.
The flips?
With the flips or burrs,
It's funny how we met, because I was doing a 3,500 square foot home in Brampton when I met her. 27 at that time. and my goal was to have, a 3-car garage. So I found this 3-car garage house in North Brampton. I was living in the basement while I was renovating the main floor and upstairs, right? I was pretty much almost done. And then I met Paulina and I told her, I'm like, I'm just housekeeping for a friend. So it's not my house, because I didn't want her to think that it was like my house, really. Right?
Because what?
Exactly.
Right? I just
But
didn't
also
want her
the
to think-
conditions he was living, it
Right.
was like, because he was doing renovation himself. So his bedroom kitchen was in a very tiny little room in the basement,
Right.
and everything was a mess.
But yeah, so
was covering
so that was
little
like the
bit
first
here.
project we kind of got into. But
So
at that time, then we did a custom home in North Beach, as they call it now. So I did a home there with partners.
But actually, you were so curious. So when we were doing some numbers for our projects and like how we doing things, and it's like you you write down all the flips and the amount. So I think it was like what, 45 flips?
No, I was involved in, I think, 19 flips, 39 real estate transactions,
Wow.
and over
Yeah.
$30 million in value in
Yeah.
today's price. So.
Plus the other 4 properties that we were able to acquire after that.
But it was never like a full blown business like we're treating it now, right? Now it's like more mature. I know where we need to go with this real estate. I've seen what I've done and how I could apply to what we're
Yeah.
doing together, and it's exciting. I can't wait.
Yeah.
And the multis is one of those things that we love, because we know again what that
You
number
can
is going to
scale.
look at the end if we fall into that space
Yeah.
of our comfort with the numbers, right?
But this is perfect example of you overestimate what you can do in a year, but underestimate what you can do in 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
And
Wow.
when he was throwing those numbers, like, yeah, they are pretty awesome, but it's time. It's the last 15 years or
20
so.
years since 19. Yeah.
So we just have to look at the time too.
The market becomes a lot more stable, like that. Becomes a balanced market. Would you still consider flipping properties, or you're going to just dive into multifamily moving forward?
Multifamily.
Okay, so
That's
flipping properties is
definitely-
no
We're
longer
in
an
a
option.
flip right now. We're in a flip right now in Burlington. Paulina has that with the JV.
Good location, yeah. Great location.
But again, that's going to be something that they're now, because of the market, now we have to think of other options, right?
Yeah.
So they are going to turn
And
it in.
we actually, we had already 3 different exits
Right.
for that property, because like if you're buying into something and this is your only way to do it, and then you're gonna face the problems, like what then? Like you're gonna be so stressed, and like what is the next solution? Like what we gonna do here? We already had the ideas in mind that we're gonna do after. Like if this is not gonna work, we can do this or this. But moving forward, for me right now, it's definitely looking more into multifamily space and just stick to it.
We do want to do some STRs. We do definitely
Paul
want
wants to do it.
Yeah, I want to do. I like that idea. I like the idea of the cash flow. I like dealing with people that are going to come in. You get to know them, and then they move on, and they get to experience your place. I think that's a pretty cool aspect.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It will draw you back into the operation, though, I gotta say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heard it's a big, more of a day-to-day. But I've also spoken to people that have a good system in place, and a lot of it has to be digitalized. I think I even seen a hotel that had no people on site, where everything is just done by a computer, by your
No, that's
phone.
next level.
Yeah,
That business model is getting more and more popular in Asia, actually.
Yeah, so
Yeah, there's apps for it. I've seen that too, where people will just go to the door, and if you have the right system in, you
That's it,
just
yeah.
log in,
Yeah.
type in
Yeah.
your password, scan your QR code or whatever, and then door unlocks for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's, pretty great.
pretty
Right?
cool. Yeah,
And yeah, why not?
We're going in
yeah.
that direction.
Yeah.
This is coming.
And
But-
especially right now
Either-
with the Ontario and the landlord and tenant rule, so many landlords are veering away from the traditional rental models because
Yeah.
of things like this. So they're
Yeah.
looking at short-term rentals and Airbnb options, just because. The downside to it is that I think there's obstacles when how long you're going to operate it for
Yeah.
when it comes to the refinance, right?
Yes.
Because the
Right.
banks want to see reliable income,
Yep.
so they need you to operate, I think, for 2 years. But there's ways around that you can figure out. It's just,
There's always ways to go around, but
creative
it-
financing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
to
really
answer
think
your
it's
answer,
not
though-
that scalable as multifamily space. Though.
Yeah. The next thing I want to ask now is, because everything sounds pretty great, like everything's going smoothly, but I'm sure that you've come across your own hardships along the way. So my question would be, have you ever lost any money on a project, or would you, especially in today's market? There's people, I see listings that have gone up and properties that have sold, where last year we had considered buying them, we got outbid, and then somebody else is selling it, and they're obviously losing money on these projects.
Yeah.
Would you guys, or have you guys ever lost any money on a project?
Well,
Probably
we did.
because
We've,
it's
we've
part of
t-
the investments.
in a deal in Kitchener that we had to walk away from. So that was a $20,000 down payment that we lost.
But again,
Paulina
we're calculating like better to lose 20,000 now than
Exactly,
100,000 in 3 months.
Right.
Mm.
So definitely, if the short end of the stick is if we're gonna lose a little right now, but and we could lose a lot more later. $20,000 in real estate is not that big of a deal, but you could lose a lot more. But we're okay. Walk away from deals if we have to.
Yeah.
Right. The Burlington project was something that was bought at the same time when we saw a lot more opportunity there, just because the lot size is really big, the location, right, a much better location. We saw that even if we were not able to sell it and break even, we could still get a good renter in there, 2 renters for upstairs, downstairs, and hold it and be still in a favorable position once the market becomes stable again, right?
But even to your point, like if I will lose money, it's the question like where I'm gonna lose that money. Because if you're looking if you're gonna trying to look 10, 12, 15 unit building, you're gonna have to do due diligence, and that costs. And you may walk away from the property and that money is gone. But like I said, it's just part of the equation, and you have to be prepared for that.
So sometimes you just calculate it as the cost of business.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Especially on the multis, right? Like there's costs of, an appraisal, right? To do a commercial appraisal is $3,500, but they'll give you a booklet and a full detail of where you're going to, be with that property with your projected rents. Huge advantage, right?
Yeah.
Which cost?
Environmentals. You go in
yeah.
phase 1, phase 2s, right?
Yeah.
I was bidding on a property about 10 years ago on a commercial building, and it was $1 million at that time for about 10,000 square feet in Rexdale, Toronto. And the deal breaker at that time was because it required a phase 2. And that's how I learned about phase 2 at that time, because the bank wasn't willing to cover the cost, whatever that was, to go get into that phase 2.
Sometimes the introduction to environmentals, especially to phase 2, because phase 1 is fine.
Exactly.
Right? Phase 1's okay. And it's only when you are obligated to go into phase 2, and especially when you just have an inkling that this isn't going to go in my favor.
Yeah.
Right? And you know that you're probably going to do it, and then you're arguing. I think we did one with Pinchin, I think is one of the environmental companies, and it can sometimes be it feels like you're gambling, right?
Yeah.
When you're paying for some of this stuff out, right? And it's like, how committed are you to this project? And maybe you should just find something easier, because the cleanup on some of these things is just
But this is why
it can cost a lot.
I told the bank, if you want us to pursue this deal, then you are going to be responsible for whatever that cost is, right? And the bank was the seller.
Oh, the bank was the
bank
seller.
was the seller. So it was a foreclosure in the bank.
Oh, yeah, some negotiating terms.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the bank said no, they're not willing to do it, and we walked away from that deal.
Is there anything that you have experienced so far in your previous projects where this was just like a big learning experience, where you're like, okay, this I didn't calculate, whether it's a renovation going wrong, whether it's something that you completely didn't anticipate, where I know with favorable real estate markets, you can still recover financially. But is there any lessons that you feel you learned through your journey that you wish you knew before?
For me, it's going to be don't wait the last minute to sign the letter of commitment.
Yes. Yeah.
Big lesson
It
here.
sounds like you did that.
Back in 2016, we actually couldn't qualify for mortgage, and we had to walk away from one deal. It wasn't because the down payment or anything, is literally because we couldn't arrange the mortgage. It was way too late, and we already postponed it once.
For us, it was actually changing of terms. So the story is we are waiting for one of the property to refinance. We were working with the mortgage broker who went silent on us for like good 3 weeks, and we are just getting very close to the timeline. We're like, what is happening? So I was waiting with signing the letter of commitment with the private lender. And I was hoping that they're going to still keep the same terms. And I didn't want to, of course, commit to something that I didn't have lined up my first financing to commit to another one. I believe we can have before closing, we found like, okay, we have everything in place. Let's just sign the documents, and the terms change. So it was shorter period of time, a little bit higher interest rate. At that time, I didn't have other options to explore. It was only a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks So not enough time for me to start finding for the new lenders, new commitments, new conditions here. So we are kind of forced to sign it. So that was a big lesson. Like, if you are doing this, just line up everything before. Just make sure that everything is right.
Yeah,
Oh, you
need to
guys
allow
still
yourself
closed
time.
it.
We closed, but my
That's fine.
terms change.
Got it.
They were still good terms, don't get me wrong. But what I got on my letter of intent 4 weeks before that was something different than what I got on my commitment. I know we always saying, the commitment is the final document. Intent means technically nothing because it still can change. But it's just because of the situation, we were just waiting too long. And
This is
different
institutional private, right?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes people will look at private money and think, yeah, it's easy. And it generally is a lot easier. You don't have to jump through all the hoops like you do with the banks, with the A-lenders. But sometimes if you haven't had the experience of a private lender bullying you, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they can, because they know what position
Yeah.
you're in, especially if you wait till last minute.
100%.
They know that you have a deposit on the line, you need to close. So the power dynamic is really in their favor. And they can
That's
say,
what
yeah, you know
happened.
what? Change my mind on
Yeah.
this. This is how I want it now. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to, right?
Right.
It's either that or you lose your deposit. And they know that you're going to choose to go with them.
And I have to tell you, before I work with the private lenders, and I was in some other situations that the time changed, but that was the lesson learned just recently. Lesson learned, no more mistakes like that.
Yeah.
Yes, they can definitely take advantage of you.
Because of that, one of the things that we have now is we have this Rolodex of just private individuals. So when I first got into real estate, I was borrowing a lot of private money from a lot of very private people. I mean, when I mean very private, these are just like, one guy was a landscaper and he had $600,000 and
Yeah.
he was just lending it out like this, right? And another guy was a contractor and he was just also doing private money lending, right? And these guys, the problem with them was that they had limitations as to funds they had access to. But I still kept in contact with them. Just in case I'm in a pinch, you can call somebody else. So definitely, yeah, the last minute thing is always a pinch. But sometimes real estate is last minute.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you made a valid point, because that's exactly who saved us on this deal.
Yeah.
It was somebody that I've known and he's a mentor, really. He owns a property in downtown Toronto. I've grew up with him. And yeah, I went to him and I said, I'm in this situation. I need $450,000 and send me your terms. He sent me his terms. We were
Yeah.
completely satisfied, and yeah, we had the deal closed.
And it's quick, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was quick.
Because it's
Yeah.
a guy,
And
right?
it's what is the person that we know for a long time. Like, we have really huge respect for him.
And he's a savvy investor,
Yeah.
so he understood the numbers. He
Yeah.
saw what we were
But
doing.
he make it so easy for us.
Very
It was
easy, yeah.
like, we show him the numbers. He's like, okay, guys, no problem. We have the security. And of course, even though we know this person, we still did this by book.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You still have to go on with the
Oh, for sure.
lawyers and the
Yeah.
paperwork. And
You should never not do that. As a point of formality, you want to make sure to
Yeah.
do
Right.
these things, right? And even though some people are relaxed, like even that guy who was saying as a landscaper, I remember the way he did I needed the money in 2 days. And I remember all he did was he went on Google Maps and looked at the property and says, yeah, okay, contact my lawyer, I'll send them the money, right? And I'm just like, that's the weirdest way to do it, right?
but that
sometimes-
makes it easy, right? It's
Yeah.
great to have a contact
Yeah.
like that, and if they understand who you are, and you have that relationship with them, and they know you're a success, then they're not going to be scared to lend you that money,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
For that period of time.
Yeah.
Did you guys receive any mentorship along the way, or is literally still just making mistakes and learn from your mistakes?
School of
no,
Hard
we
Knocks.
can't make too many mistakes. They are too expensive.
It's cheaper to pay for
I
coaching.
will
Cheaper
tell
for
you,
the
I will
coaching,
tell you
yeah.
right now, I was lucky enough to always gravitate to older people when I was younger. So I got to see how they were doing things, and that's kind of how I fell into buying a property, because I had an older friend who was 25, and he had a lot of properties. And then I just kind of put everything together, and then now we're in different real estate groups. Yeah, we definitely look to people that are doing bigger things where we want to be. We'll reach out to them. We also hired we have a coach, to that's focused on the multifamily side.
Yeah.
So I've reached out to people in the community, right?
I do believe things happen for a reason, and the time when you're ready for it, and when you just start exploring options out there and start educating yourself, starting to see what it's out there, what you can do, and like get and work with people with expertise, because there's so many coaches out there, there's so many
Right.
programs
Oh, I
out
know.
there.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned at the beginning, sometimes the people, they don't bring enough experience, and they're charging you for this coaching, and the mistakes you can make are really, really like severe, right? So definitely looking into coaching, looking into mentorship, different investors groups.
Just put
and
yourself in a
put
room with
yourself
other
in-
people that are
Yeah.
doing the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to have the money to get a coach, but that doesn't mean you can't get into a room
Yeah.
with somebody and talk to them and
Yeah.
pick their brain. And somebody that's really successful said that the real successful people like to help the ones that are kind of really below them, because they've already done it.
Yeah.
The ones that are kind of on the same playing field, they almost look at you as a competitor. Don't be scared to reach for the stars, because those
Yeah.
are people that are probably a little more humble than the person who's maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of you.
That's real insight you guys have. The next question I was going to have was, if you had, and I feel like you're kind of already answering it, but if you feel like you had to do anything differently from the start, what would it have been?
I don't know if I would change anything, because I feel like
Yeah.
It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it worked out really well. Like, my life experiences led me to Paulina,
Yeah.
led me to where now we're doing multifamilies, manifesting for me from a young paper road on Jameson, seeing the big buildings, to now looking at big buildings and ready to take them down. To me, that's full circle success
Yeah.
for me.
Like you saying, what we would change. Of course, we would like to change some stuff and make it this more smooth, but without those mistakes, without the hiccups, you wouldn't learn and you wouldn't get the experience. So there's always, and I'm true believer, there's always a solution for every problem.
Yeah.
You just have to. It's not like, okay, what is happening? What I'm gonna do now? I can't do anything. No, you can do definitely something about it. So with all these mistakes, with all the things we did, and I wouldn't change anything, because things happen for a reason. That's what it is.
That's actually beautiful. It's actually beautiful because they make this point sometimes in movies. I think we saw this in this couple young guys that we mentored, and we really helped them avoid certain scrapes and bruises. But in reflection, I think we also took away certain learning opportunities that you get from those scrapes and bruises. There is value in
Massive
everything.
value.
You can avoid things, but you never learn it quite the same through wisdom as you do through experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you become sensitized to the problems now. So if you've lost 20,000, if you're going to go through another situation where you have to walk away from money, it's not a big deal anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And same thing when taking down bigger deals. If you're taking down $1 million deal, it's not a big deal anymore. Now you have to get to the hurdle of taking down a $5 or a $10 million dollar deal. And then once that becomes normal, then sky's the limit, really, whatever that objective is.
It really tells us that you guys truly enjoy the whole process, and you guys were having fun, completely okay with making the mistakes and learn from it. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start wrapping it up here. I think you guys have obviously had a lot of experiences, a lot of great insights, and you've obviously been able to share so much. I think a lot of our viewers are going to find very valuable, right, in terms of the project you've done, where you guys are going, and what the next steps are for you. So it's very exciting to have you guys on the show. If anybody wanted to reach out to you to connect, what would be the best way? Is it Instagram, email?
We're active on social media, Facebook. I go by Paul SZ. Paulina goes by Paulina SZ.
Okay.
We also have an Instagram handle.
Yeah.
So Proximity Properties is kind of our Instagram feed.
Yeah.
And if you want to reach out, send us an email. You could either direct message us on one of those platforms or info@proximityproperties.ca.
Okay. We're going to make sure, by the way, to leave some information about you in the description and somewhere here on the screen. So if any of you have any interest in reaching out to Paul or Paulina and want to know more about how it is that they're doing what they're doing, please make sure to connect with them. Very insightful people.